At my father's funeral, my uncle tried to hijack the eulogy, standing over the casket and screaming, "He owed me everything. I deserved more." Guests watched, stunned, as he ranted about all the sacrifices he never got paid back for, effectively admitting to manipulating my father financially for years. Instead of sympathy, he got slow claps of disgust from every pew. He was cut out of the family trust that same day and is still posting angry Facebook rants about it to this day. My name's Drew. I'm 38, from Lakewood, Ohio. I work in property management now, but I grew up helping my dad on job sites, sweeping up drywall dust, learning how to install insulation before I was even in high school. My dad was the kind of guy who didn't talk a lot, but you felt what he meant just by how he looked at you. He built everything he had with his hands. And when we buried him last July, I thought we'd at least get through the funeral without drama. I was dead wrong. Let me give some context first. My dad, Martin, died from pancreatic cancer after 11 brutal months. The man never complained, even when he couldn't eat or sit up without help. When hospice came in, he kept trying to help them move the furniture, even though he barely had the strength to lift a spoon. He kept a lot to himself, even his pain. But the one thing I didn't know until he passed was just how much he'd done for his younger brother, my Uncle Ray. Ray is the kind of guy who always had an excuse. Laid off. Screwed over. Bad luck. Always someone else's fault. When I was a kid, he was the cool uncle for a while because he played guitar and showed up with gifts when he wasn't too broke. But as I got older, I started seeing it. He was the one always asking for a quick loan. He was the one who could have started a business if someone would just invest in him. That someone was always my dad. My dad bailed him out more times than I can count. Paid his overdue rent. Bought him a used truck once, so he could start a landscaping gig that lasted maybe 5 months. Hired him to do cleanup on a couple of jobs, even though the guy barely showed up. Gave him a room in our basement after his second divorce. And all my dad ever said was, "He's my brother." But when my dad was dying, Ray wasn't around much. He stopped by a couple times, always making it about how he was struggling. Tough time finding work. Truck needs new brakes. Never once asked how dad was feeling. Just, "Man, if you got anything lying around to help out." Anyway, we held the funeral at Grace Lutheran in Lakewood. It's a small place, but it mattered to my mom. Same church she and dad got married in. My sister and I organized everything. I wrote a short eulogy. Mom asked me to read it because she couldn't get through a sentence without breaking down, and my sister, well, she tried, but the second she looked at Dad's photo on the easel, she lost it. So I got up there. Talked about how Dad worked 6-day weeks for 25 years. How he never missed a game or school play, even when he came in smelling like sawdust. How he made sure there was always gas in our cars when we were teenagers, even if he never said, "I love you" out loud. He showed it in everything he did. People were crying. You could feel how loved he was. Then it happened. As I stepped down from the podium, Uncle Ray stood up. Not from the front row where the family sat. From the middle, like some damn protester. He didn't ask. He didn't check with anyone. He just marched right up to the casket, stood over it, and raised his voice so loud it bounced off the stained glass. He owed me everything. There was this long, stunned pause. I thought maybe I misheard him. But no. He kept going. I made sacrifices for him. I put my life on hold so he could live his. I deserved more than I got. My aunt gasped. Someone actually whispered, "Jesus Christ." He started pacing, arms out like he was commanding a stage. He took from me, and then he cut me off. All of you think he was some kind of saint, but I was the one who kept him afloat. And where's my thank you? Where's my share? The room was frozen. Nobody moved. The pastor looked like he wanted to crawl under the pew. My mom stood up, holding the edge of the pew like she was about to faint. And then someone clapped. Slow, loud, one beat at a time. Clap, clap, clap. It came from the back. One of my dad's old friends, Mike. Then someone else joined in. And another. The clapping got louder, but not because they were agreeing with Ray.
No.
It was sarcasm. It was disgust. It was the kind of slow clap you give when someone shows you exactly who they are, and you want them to hear it. Ray stopped cold. His face went red. He looked around like he just realized the spotlight had turned into a heat lamp. My mom pointed right at him and said, "You used him your whole life.
Get out."
Ray tried to mutter something, then turned and stormed down the aisle, knocking over a hymnal rack on the way out. After the service, we went back to my parent house. Everyone was still in shock. That's when Mom told us Ray was listed in Dad's trust. Not for much, but something, a kind of symbolic thank you. Less than 5%, but still a piece. Not anymore. We called our family lawyer that night. Went through the paperwork. My dad left certain clauses up to us, in case of dispute or misconduct. Ray's little speech counted. We had 24 witnesses ready to back us up. By the next morning, the paperwork was filed. He was officially removed.
Now?
He's been on Facebook, ranting for months, talking about betrayal, posting memes about real loyalty and snakes in the grass. Even wrote a long post saying he was the real victim and hinting that we stole from him. I've got screenshots. And we're not even halfway through. After we cut Ray out of the trust, things got quiet for about a week. Too quiet. Then one night, I came home from work to find my mom crying in her kitchen. She was holding her phone, shaking. I thought maybe it was another Facebook rant, but it wasn't. Ray had gone to Dad's old clients. He'd started calling around, telling people he used to help run the business, and that he was the real brains behind it. Said he was thinking about restarting the company under new management, and hinted that I had taken over without experience or respect for legacy. A few of them knew better and hung up on him. But one woman, Mrs. Kinley, called my mom. She was confused, said Ray had come by her house in person and left a flyer. A flyer. Ray printed out cheap flyers that said, "Martin Brothers contracting, back and better than ever." My dad's name, his logo, even pictures from his old website. All stolen. He just added Ray Martin, managing partner, under it like nothing had changed. That's when I lost it. I drove straight to Ray's duplex over on Detroit Avenue. He wasn't home, but his beat-up Ford was parked out front. I left a note under his windshield, short and clear. "Use Dad's name or business again, and I will sue you into the dirt." He didn't respond, but the flyer stopped. I thought maybe that scared him off. Then came the email. My sister forwarded it to me. Ray had sent it to her mom and even a few of our cousins. The subject line said, "The truth." Inside, it was 5 paragraphs of pure poison. He said our dad owed him his career, that our mom turned us against him, and that we robbed him blind. He claimed he'd been promised more, and said he was going to get what was his, one way or another. That was the first time I felt a pit in my stomach. It was no longer just a bitter man lashing out online. He was starting to sound unstable. The next day, someone egged my mom's car. She called the police. Filed a report. No proof it was Ray, but everyone knew. He didn't even bother hiding it, made a post that afternoon that said, "Karma always comes around. You'll see." Still, cops said nothing could be done.
No cameras. No witnesses.
That weekend, I checked our dad's storage unit out in Elyria. He kept old job files there, paperwork, extra tools. I hadn't been out since before the funeral. When I opened the door, my stomach dropped. Everything was ransacked. Folders torn open. Boxes dumped out. Tools missing. It wasn't just random. Someone had been looking for something. Probably financials. Maybe something he thought would help his case. The lock hadn't been forced. I checked the paperwork. My dad had listed a secondary key holder.
It was Ray.
That night, I had a new lock installed. Changed everything. But the damage was done. And that's when I made a decision. If Ray wanted to play dirty, I'd stop playing nice. I didn't go to the cops after the storage unit incident. I knew what they'd say. No sign of forced entry, and Ray was listed on the lease. I needed to be smarter. So I dug in. I started looking through everything Dad left behind. Files. Old tax returns. invoices, even an old laptop that I hadn't turned on in years. I wanted to see if there was anything that could explain why Ray felt so entitled, or something I could use to shut him down legally. What I found made my blood run cold. Buried in an old folder labeled Personal/Loans was a scanned notebook. Pages and pages of handwritten entries, my dad's writing. Every dollar he ever gave Ray, every promise, every time Ray said, "I'll pay you back." It added up to over $82,000. Over 2 decades, my dad had floated him everything: car repairs, rent, even a down payment on one of Ray's failed businesses. It was all logged. Every payment request. Every, "I'll get it to you next month." Some even had dates when my dad wrote, "never repaid." But the worst part? One note at the bottom of a 2016 page. Ray said if I didn't help again, he'd tell Mom about the thing in '97. Said I owed him. I didn't think he'd go that low. What thing in '97? I sat with that sentence for hours. I couldn't ask my dad. And I couldn't ask my mom yet, not without knowing what the hell I was asking about. So I called Aunt Darlene, Ray and Dad's older sister. She lives out in Parma and doesn't do social media, doesn't care for drama. I figured if anyone knew what happened in '97, it was her. She hesitated when I asked, but when I read that exact line to her, there was a long pause. Then she said, "Oh no, he really went there." Turns out, in 1997, Ray was arrested. He was caught stealing tools from a supply yard, not just a few, but truckloads. Felony-level stuff. Dad bailed him out, paid the legal fees, hired a lawyer, talked to the owner himself to smooth things over, got Ray a plea deal that kept him out of prison. But he told Mom it was a misunderstanding at work. If she knew the truth, she would have kicked Ray out of the family right then. So Ray had been holding that over Dad's head for years, quietly using it, guilt-tripping him, threatening to spill it every time Dad hesitated to help. It wasn't just manipulation. It was blackmail. And now, even after death, he was still trying to cash in. That night, I scanned every page of that notebook and sent it to our lawyer. She said it was a goldmine, clear evidence that not only had Ray been paid far more than what he was owed, but that he used threats to keep the money flowing. Enough to squash any future claim. But then I made a decision that went beyond legal. I printed the whole thing out, highlighted the worst entries. I mailed it, the full packet, to every client Ray had tried to contact, every cousin he emailed, everyone he told his side of the story to. Then, I sent a copy to Ray himself, with a note. "Here's what you were really owed. Now go ahead and post this to Facebook." He didn't respond right away, but when he did, it hit harder than I expected. He showed up at my mother's front door. It was a Tuesday evening. My mom had just finished dinner. I was there helping her with some housework when the doorbell rang. She looked out the peephole, and her whole body went stiff. "It's him," she said. I opened the door. Ray stood there, half drunk by the look of him. Hair greasy, shirt wrinkled, holding an envelope in one hand and a bottle of cheap whiskey in the other. Before I could say anything, he shoved the envelope at me and said, "You want to destroy me? Fine. Here, take the rest." Inside were receipts, bank statements, copies of checks my dad wrote to cover Ray's failed landscaping business. More proof of the money trail. But it didn't matter anymore. I already had everything I needed. "I didn't come here to fight," Ray said, slurring a little. "I came to say I was owed something. Maybe not money, but respect." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "You stood over your brother's casket and screamed that he owed you. That was the last thing anyone heard at his funeral. You think that earns respect?" Ray shook his head. "You don't get it. He always had it easier. Everyone loved him. I got leftovers." "You got chance after chance," I snapped. "He gave you money, work, a place to live. He covered up a felony for you. What more did you want, Ray? Blood?" He looked away. "Maybe." Then my mom opened the door behind me. "You need to leave," she said coldly. "You've taken enough from this family." He looked at her, eyes wet now. For a second he seemed small, tired,
Beaten.
I have nothing left, he whispered. Mom stared him down. Then maybe now you know how your brother felt. Every time you asked, every time you lied, every time he handed you something he worked for, while you sat back and complained. Ray didn't answer. He turned and walked down the porch steps, got into his truck, drove off. That was the last time I saw him. But it wasn't over. A week later, a Facebook post went up on Ray's profile. It was a picture of my dad's grave, taken at night. The caption said, "Some debts never get repaid. But some graves don't stay quiet." I showed it to the police. They said it wasn't a direct threat, but they kept a record. I installed cameras at Mom's house. Changed all our locks again. The grave was fine.
We checked.
But I knew something had changed. Ray was spiraling. The next post came days later, a long ramble about betrayal, how blood means nothing, and how they'll feel what I felt. That's when I did the one thing I'd been holding back. I went public. I posted the full story, the receipts, the notebook, the 1997 arrest, everything. On my own profile, I tagged every family member, every mutual friend. I ended it with a message. This is the truth. He tried to shame my father, steal from us, and ruin a man who carried him for 20 years. This ends now. The fallout was fast. Ray lost the few people who still talked to him. Our cousins unfriended him. His landlord, who was a friend of my dad's, saw the post and served him notice the same week. Apparently, Ray was behind on rent again, anyway. 2 weeks later, he was evicted. I heard through a cousin he's living out of that beat-up Ford now. Parking behind bars, sleeping with the engine off to save gas. Still posting rants, but fewer people see them. Just angry noise in a dark hole he dug himself into. And as for me, I kept Dad's business name clean. I framed the notebook page where he wrote, "Ray said if I didn't help again," and put it in my office. A reminder that love has limits. That family can bleed you dry if you let them. And I did let him for a while. But now, Ray knows what it feels like to be cut off. Not just from money, from memory, from legacy, from family. And I made sure he'd never get it back.